statistics on this, Phil. Levitated by the human touch.
Here's the pass. Antonio's through. Chance of 4. What a goal! What a brilliant strike by Antonio!
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Knees Up Mother Brown podcast. I am joined as ever by the two little elves that keep Santa's workshop going, Jack Elderton and Callum Goodall. Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are we?
I ain't got time to keep Santa's workshop going, not with all these games.
No, the Christmas period is busy for elves, but it's busy for football fans too. There's barely a day goes by, it feels. We are coming to you not long after another famous win, I suppose you'd call it, against Chelsea. So there may be a little bit of excitement in the air, but things are going here as usual. If you'd like to get in touch, all correspondence can be sent to any of these options. The email address, which is podcast@kumb.com, although there may be some issues with that at the moment. So if you have sent it in the week, I've not set it up very well. So I am going to need someone to look at that for me. But I did need to mention that. There's also the...
we're just ignoring
thread.
you. We're just...
Yeah, I mean, I have sent my own email as a check, just in case. I didn't want it could just be that no one cares, so I best send my own. There's also the thread on the website, kumb.com, in the general discussion area, and Twitter, as ever. The boss will get those. kumb.com, all letters, all words, no punctuation. I suppose we should start with Chelsea. And before we crack on, I do have some words that I'd like to add in. This is pre-match in our chat on Twitter, in our messages before, just in case these two geniuses are going to feel too boastful of this. Obviously hope it works, but also thinks Moyes could do without encouragement on this system. That was Jack. 3-5-2, 3-4-1-2, same thing. Hasn't worked, and we've tried it times already, yet to win with it against much weaker opposition. And also, Genk rinsed us with this system. Genk, wonder what Chelsea will do. It's not all Jack, though. There is cows, and I would not have predicted that level of fuckery, and you can beep that if you want. And even me, I said there's some proper fear management again. And so,
we were really positive pre-match.
We could be clever after the fact. We weren't so much before, so, although Jack did predict this a week ago, to be fair to him.
Cheers, thank you for the...
I've got my comeback in first.
Yeah,
I really knew what I was doing there. Before anything tactical, I suppose, we should just look at genuine fan reaction. You were there, Jack. What a day.
It was brilliant. I mean, it's kind of funny because there was quite a long period of the game where Chelsea were managing things quite well, but they were really quiet. Their fans were really, really quiet. And then from the second goal or the equaliser for 2-2 onwards, it's fantastic atmosphere in there. Really great atmosphere. And it's, we've had a couple of those this season now, which is really lovely that there's this connection between the players and the fans. And it certainly doesn't feel like home, but it's starting to feel like something I can, tolerate and enjoy. And I'm starting to really, it's starting to be a really positive experience going down to the ground, which I wouldn't thought I would be saying, 2 years ago. So yeah, really, really fantastic day.
No, that is definitely new. I think a lot of people are this season. I mean, you may argue maybe all it ever needed was success and for some memories to be built for it to work, but at least the fans are back into it. Maybe it's that breakaway from football as well. It was a great game to watch, wasn't it, Callum?
Yeah, loved it. It was also a fantastic atmosphere in my one-bedroom flat. It was raucous. It was stomping. Yeah, man, it was wicked.
It's got in! That's incredible! Masuaku shoots from an impossible angle!
There was a lot going on in that game, wasn't there? There was a lot going on. We've obviously there's a lot of individual performances. Yeah, I mean, I think we thought we were going to spend a lot of time talking about Brighton today, and Brighton, for what it was, he's going to have to go to the back seat for this because there was so much going on. Moyes masterclass, I guess, Jack.
Outstanding. I think by far the best I've seen from him in terms of in-game management. It's something he's been criticised for so many times: slowness to respond to things, slowness to make substitutions, slowness to change systems. Today, I don't know how many, I've lost count of how many times we changed system to respond to things that Chelsea were doing. And every time he tried something different, it worked. For a period, we were able to regain control or stop Chelsea from creating in the way that they were able to. So it was magnificent. And then to deal with the injuries on top, to deal with two injuries to defenders, to respond to those injuries and make positive changes both times that really massively impacted the game and turned things in our favour is a remarkable thing to see from Moyes, particularly against, I mean, a side like Chelsea. Maybe you'd see that against the Burnley or something previously, but for him to be that bold in his decision making against Chelsea and against one of the best in-game managers. I mean, this guy's got a huge reputation, Tuchel, for being one of the best in-game managers in the world, if not maybe the best in-game manager in the world. And Moyes absolutely schooled him today.
I mean, I think I said to you after the game, for everything Moyes did right, I don't think any of Tuchel's changes worked at all. Which
other than bringing Hudson-Odoi on at left wing back towards the end, which did have a really big impact for them, and they started creating loads of chances down that side. And then that's again, Moyes' reaction to that was perfect to then put Rice in at right centre back at the end to just stop the supply line down that flank. Was brilliant to stop it. But that was the only change I felt that really worked for Chelsea that Tuchel made.
When it changed, I'd guess be the injury to Johnson forced a big change in the whole way we played, not just system wise, but also the personnel. It changed the dynamics, didn't it?
Massively to bring. I mean, one of the things we'll talk about in the Brighton section is the lack of a left footer on the left side, and to bring a left footer on over there really allowed us to push wing backs higher rather than having so much kind of a lopsided system, and it allowed us to kind of get Antonio and Bowen closer together because the width can be supplied by the wing backs then, which you don't really get with Johnson playing out at left wing back. As much as I love him, it's not really something he can offer, given that he has a left foot, but he's so keen to come back on the right side every time that that you can't really push the wing backs that high in that way. And obviously, the one time we actually got punished for it. It's Johnson getting high up was what led to the Chelsea second. The real thing actually are the changes that come in the second half, and the decisions, particularly around the blend of the midfield three and how you alter things to be able to press well and also to be able to defend well in a last line sense, and then also to counter well. All the different tweaks in terms of starting with Lanzini high up, then dropping Lanzini in, and then Souček going high up, and then Souček appearing on the right as well in this kind of almost right forward position for a period of the second half. All these different changes to allow us to attack in different ways and also to defend in much more proactive ways than we were in the first half massively helped us.
So what do you think worked best? It's hard because obviously we had different changes, did different things. I think, Callum, if I looked at the period I saw with the 11 personnel that worked best was the 5-3-2 with the wing backs really pushing on. Yeah. When Lanzini sat it. I thought that made that Lanzini, who had a good game, looked his best in terms of possession on the ball, and that helped us gain some possession.
Yeah, 100%. That was the one that I'd noted down in my notes as being the most important for a number of reasons. Jack's already touched on some. So obviously taking those wingers out and putting Lanzini deeper not only afforded us more control in the middle, which is in the first half particularly, we were getting overruns probably a bit strong, but we were struggling to control the midfield. And I think that's something that we kind of flagged up before, is the way their wing backs play, the way Reece James almost comes in as like an auxiliary central midfielder. It makes it difficult because whilst on paper it looks like there's not as many midfielders, they sort of flood the middle of the park. And as good as Rice and Souček are, you're asking a lot of them to be able to control that midfield on their own. So dropping Lanzini in there just gave them more of an outlet when they're trying to break through, and Lanzini's occupying little holes. But it also meant that Souček in particular could hassle Jorginho, is that how you say it? A little bit more, press him more, and he was basically redundant for the majority of the game. Like, he just did not get to do his usual stuff, and then it also meant that the wing backs, like Jack's already said, were able to go far higher up, which is something we've said we wanted to see Soufal in the team for, is because of his attacking output, and he flourished in that role today. And to be fair to him, even Masuaku, like one thing he definitely is pretty decent at is getting up when he's allowed some more attacking license and getting up that left side. And he did that effectively today, obviously sealing it with a pretty fluky or magnificent goal. And then the final thing I think, which was really important, was having Antonio and Bowen closer together, because in that first half, when Antonio was essentially operating as a lone striker against those three centre backs, they didn't really have that much trouble because they could manage him pretty effectively. But when Bowen and Antonio teamed up, their sort of awareness of each other and the runs, like moving centre backs away to focus on Bowen's runs, then meant Antonio could get in, or Antonio using his body and strength again, like going into battle with Christensen or Rudiger or whoever it was, Thiago Silva, meant that they'd be preoccupied trying to handle Antonio, who's obviously a difficult guy to get a wrap on, which then invites the opportunity for Bowen to then get in behind, which we saw happen way more in the second half. So I think, yeah, that for me was the most important change for those three reasons, and they were all so positive.
Before I go back to Jack, and I'm going to go to you on the substitutions, I would say, how do you think it affected Zuma's game at the back there? Well, obviously, the three was a different system, different fish. Did you think that suited him and that gave his strengths a chance to shine, Cal?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like we've said before, since Ogbonna's been out, he's kind of being asked to play a role that he's less comfortable in. And the one thing you can do to make someone more comfortable at the back is give them another body to pass the ball to. Like, he can now look either side and release it and kind of recycle possession a lot more comfortably. Whereas previously he only had Dawson, who, in terms of ball playing, it's like you probably don't feel that confident passing the ball to him anyway, because he's not renowned for being the most composed in possession. So having both options, particularly with Diop as well, who is far more comfortable on the ball, I think, yeah, it meant that he had a bit more security at the back today. And then again, well, he was off the pitch at that point, but Rice kind of came in and offered that security and comfort on the ball when Zuma was off.
I really liked how it worked when we went to when the wing backs were pushed higher with Masuaku on the pitch and the centre backs split a little bit more, and you got a much more Zuma versus Lukaku duel that I felt that we were really, I mean, he was really winning that, I felt. And we were conceding quite a lot of crosses into the box, but the centre backs were just getting rid of it every time. We weren't really conceding chances off of it.
Well, yeah, that was one note. Zuma made 8 clearances, which is about 6 more than anyone else in the team, because he got to dominate that central space. Yeah,
it was really, really good in there, particularly in that period. And just to pick up on a couple of things that Cal mentioned, that 3-4-3 system that we went to with the wing backs pushed higher, or 3-4-1-2, really, it's hard to really clarify what Souček's role is, because you can almost look at it as a 3 when you're defending, and a sort of 5-3-2. So with Souček and a 3 in midfield when you're defending deep. But actually, when we're pressing, I mean, the most impressive thing was taking Jorginho out the game and pushing and seeing that actually when we've got the ball, we're struggling to counter effectively, because the first phase of possession has got Souček and Rice in there. And actually, there's only one of those that's really got the ability to ping a pass in behind straight away, first touch or second touch. So to put Lanzini in there, which you might go, oh God, that's not that you lose all your defensive security by doing that. Actually, what it meant is we could counter really quickly. And what it meant is when we were pressing, Souček could get right on top of Jorginho, almost in this like striker position with Antonio and Bowen split to press the centre backs, and just completely cut Jorginho's supply forward out, which then what that forced them to do is it forces Jorginho or the midfielders to go back into the centre backs and funnel things wide. And we love defending crosses. We just absolutely love defending crosses. And it was a problem for a period, particularly after, or in the period just before we scored and then after we scored. It was that the overload with Hudson-Odoi was like a bit frightening, especially when we went to a 4-2-3-1 after Zuma's injury. But it allows us to defend in the way that we're comfortable, and to force Chelsea to play against us in the way that we want them to play against us is that's so impressive. You can't understate how impressive that is, because they're so good, especially with exactly what you're saying about Reece James in build-up, and then Reece James, the 2 inside forwards in that 3-4-2-1 system can drive in off the flanks, and then our wing backs get drawn with that. It creates the space out wide, and then Reece James is like in acres of space, or Alonso on the other side. To force them to stop doing that and to stop doing what they're brilliant at doing, and to try and create chances another way, which actually suits us, is a really remarkable thing to achieve from a tactical perspective in a game. Not to set up to do that from the start, but to change that in a game and to have that much effect with the changes you make is so impressive.
I think the only time I can really think that when we were settled, they made one big chance was probably that Havertz header in the first half. He had a bit of a free header from a James Cross. And that was just one time the system didn't work. Everywhere else, they didn't really offer any threats building that pressure. I suppose it's the difference to Brighton is that when we tried to force them to do something, we could force Chelsea to do something. We didn't seem to be able to force Brighton to do something. But on today, what is it that we did that worked when Zuma went off then? Because that was quite a brave call bringing Fornals on.
I mean, we at that point we were playing a 3-1-4-2 at the moment that he came off. I mean, there's another change that we'd gone to for about 7 minutes, I'd say, when that happened. We had really positive control of the game. I think it was the most comfortable we'd been in the whole match, was in this sort of 3-1-4-2 situation or system with Rice deeper and Souček and Lanzini slightly ahead. I felt that we had total control of the game. So when the Zuma injury happens, you almost feel tempted to say, well, let's stick with a 3-1-4-2 and slot someone who's not a centre-back in at centre-back.
Rice
Yeah, so for example, Rice could have gone in there and Souček could have come back into defensive midfield, and then you bring on a central midfielder like Kral or Noble or someone to sit in with Lanzini and to try and replicate what you're doing. To completely throw that out the window and say, look, we can go to a 4-2-3-1 here and just do what we do really well and what we've done previously really well for a short period against Chelsea and see how that affects the game. It's a remarkably confident decision to make. At that point,
it changed the dynamic of how we played entirely, because suddenly there was more flooding forward. It certainly felt like Fornals, whether that's because it just the change of whatever or personnel, or just because that's how he plays. Suddenly, some of those passes were more dangerous, and that creates the big chance that Bowen nearly gets on with Antonio.
Well, you can see why I'm not much of a fan of the 3 at the back system, because we changed to a 4 and suddenly we're creating chances all over the shop.
Yeah,
you know, like 4-2-3-1, bang! Now we're creating loads of chances. And by the way, Fornals was absolutely outstanding off the bench. His first time forward passing was just ludicrous. The amount of passes that he was just zipping into space with his first or second touch, just next level thing to be able to do off the bench.
He is, as ever, an extremely intelligent player. I suppose that shows again when he's coming off the bench to have to make a big impact in a game like this. Is there any? We kind of ended up at the end with Rice at the back, which was
again
to do with that channels, I guess.
Yes, again, it's this thing of like, okay, we've changed the system. We're doing really well. We've scored the goal. Right now I'm going to completely abandon that and go back to what we were doing before that let us have so much control. So Fornals did come into a central midfield position. Souček went back to pressing a little bit more, and Rice went in at right centre back to stop the supply line down that side with Hudson-Odoi. So Soufal can go and engage rather than letting Hudson-Odoi take 1, 2, 3 touches and line up across into the box.
Yeah.
And that was really, I mean, you can't underestimate how important that was. It was such a short period of the game, but I can almost, obviously I can't assure you, but I was almost certain that Chelsea would have created another chance or would have got an equaliser if we had stayed with the 4-2-3-1 because of the amount of space that Hudson-Odoi was getting.
I think as well, the crucial part is the timing of the game. It's like he could have, it's not just putting a body back there. It's putting like probably the most press resistant player in our team at the back at a time in the match where Chelsea are chasing a goal. So they're going to be pressing us way more intensely. So you then counter that intense pressing by putting Rice in there, who you're like, his composure on the ball at the back, no matter how deep into his own half, is just ridiculous. Like, I think we've seen it a couple of times, maybe once today, and then definitely against Brighton, where he just chips the ball over the opposition player's foot about a yard in front of him and then just dispatches a pass all the way down the field. And to have the audacity to even try that in a game that was as closely balanced as it was and do it effectively, that's exactly why I think he's put him there, is because he's almost anticipated the intense pressure and just thought, right, well, who do we want in there if we're going to get pressed like that? Oh, Rice, cool. And it worked to an absolute T. Like, there was so many times where he could have just punted it up the field first time, but no, he'd make sure he knock the ball out of his feet, get his head up, look which corner of the pitch he wants to pump it into, and then make sure that all the players down there where Antonio's holding it in the corner flag or Bowen's chasing it down, and they've got to restart their phase of possession because they've just got it back to Thiago Silva or whoever, who then has to try and get the ball back up the pitch. And it was made impossibly difficult for them because Jorginho was being so well, like effectively pressed that the guy who is usually responsible for bringing that ball up or like finding the passes just couldn't do it. So, yeah, masterful.
And same for Fornals dropping into the deeper position. exactly the same thing you've just described with Rice, just to have the confidence to turn out and be playing passes forwards rather than saying, I'm getting pressed really heavily, I'm just going to drop it back into a centre back. So no, I'm going to take on my man or spin wide, and now I really have to connect the pass, because if I don't, we're under loads of pressure. To have the confidence to do that and then to be able to execute it each time is really, really impressive.
You're not going to have seen this from inside the ground, but that first goal, the finer details of that, Cal, were hair tearing out kind of anger towards Mikel Antonio and Thiago Silva, really.
Yeah, I don't know. Like we discussed in the chat about each player's job in defending corners and set pieces. Are you a blocker? Are you a marker? But for me, it's just fundamentals. Like Thiago Silva has had a free run basically, and the ball is perfect height for Antonio to just jump up and nod it away. And instead, he's just watched it go over his head, and then it's a free header on goal. And like we've seen Thiago Silva score goals like that before. I think he might have even. I don't know if he scored one against us like that last season, but I'm sure he scored one against someone else. And yeah, it's just like schoolboy stuff. Kind of, if the ball's coming to you and no one else has headed it before you, and you need to get it out, just jump and get it out. And he didn't do anything.
Jack kind of said, "Oh, when we were talking, it isn't his job to be a blocker." And the figures, like, even if he was a blocker, I guess he should be close to his man and try to stop. And that's the problem was that he wasn't even blocking him from getting a header. He was just standing in a space that was near.
The funniest thing about it that I thought was that it was basically a carbon copy of the Harry Kane Antonio goal, where Harry Kane basically did the exact same thing, just refused to jump, and Antonio then got the goal. And now it's like the tables have turned. he was doing that. I can't be asked to jump and defend, and then we got punished for it.
Well, he had a horrible first 30 minutes, didn't he, Antonio? Really?
Yeah.
It was just, that was part of the issue, is lack of running and lack of effort in that first 30 minutes. I obviously I didn't see that with the goal, but it kind of sums up his first 30 minutes if it's sort of not following your man and not jumping.
Yeah, it was just non-committal. Like everything was non-committal. He wasn't pressing very well in the first half at all, no. if ever.
Well, certainly not in the first half hour.
Yeah, and his passing was, again, as loose as ever. Again, in the first half hour, it definitely got better in the second half. But yeah, and that classic sort of the body language thing as well. Like when he doesn't press effectively or something, and then he just like flails his arms and kind of just walks back and just watches play resume without him. It's just very frustrating.
From one player up front who's not doing pressing to another who did a lot of pressing and got his absolute reward for it was Bowen, although I think it's a little bit unfair. Commentary blames Mendy a little bit. He's given an awful pass, and Bowen is already on him by the time he takes the touch. But he gets the reward for it, for the hard work.
Few things on this. Antonio deserves credit here because he's the first player to go and press.
Yeah.
And this was probably the first time in the game that he did. And it's one of those moments where you're really pleased, but you're also quite frustrated because you think that's what you get if you press. Why don't you do it all the time? Why are you not doing that regularly in games? Why do you go through 90 minutes sometimes without doing that once?
That's literally what I've written
down once.
Yeah, I think that was your...
In my notes here, I've put almost as though Antonio had to be convinced in live action that pressing is actually effective before he decides to do it again.
I think you'll find this is all theoretical.
What? So Antonio goes, right? Then Bowen goes. That creates the first problem. Rice follows, and that's one of the things that's great about Rice is he reads really well when the press is starting and charges up. And then with the pass back to Mendy in the end, Mendy's just got to pick that up, hasn't he?
It.
Or just, do something. Don't stay on the ball. Concede an indirect free kick if you have to.
I will give it the defense is because originally you just think, he could just. But the pass is so bad that he's already got Bowen on him by the time he really gets the ball.
Right.
But he does that goalkeeper panic thing where it's, I've taken a touch now, so I can't just kick it randomly. I have to try and play. Whereas all he really needs to do is just go, I'm screwed here, and just poke it wide.
Boot it out, yeah.
Just anything, even if it's just a toe away from where you are.
Yeah.
And then he does the thing that goalkeepers then have to do when they lose the ball. I have to make a challenge, which he didn't have to do. But if he just stood still, Bowen would have had to turn around and do something with it.
Yeah.
But that's the reward you get for these things. And I thought we were really, what was different today is that we pressed the goal kicks as well. We forced them to take long goal kicks because we were brave stepping up on that. And there were times where they were just standing still. They were just standing still, Chelsea, because they didn't know what to do because we'd done it. And I mean, Mendy lost his head for at least 5 minutes, if not into the second half. I don't think you can attribute any part of that to the Masuaku goal unless you're really looking for a tenuous link. And I do love my tenuous links. But then Manu steps up and puts that penalty away. Like I think if there's a player you were confident in, I was sitting there going, I hope that's Lanzini picking up the ball. And I didn't want it to be Rice, who granted put in a lovely free kick in the first half. It's great to see him doing that as well and adding about 5 or 6 set piece takers we have now who can do it. But composure, and he struck it firmly into the corner as well, Cal.
Yeah, mate, it was a great finish. I was actually very nervous when I was watching it with my girlfriend. I was like, oh, yes, we've got a penalty. And I was like, oh, who's going to take it? Because we really still haven't solved that problem. I don't know who it is. But yeah, that's Lanzini was there. And then when he had it, I was like, oh, yeah, he's got this. And he deserves it. Like, it's kind of he's just a continuation of his great form. I think just quickly before we move on as well, I think the pressing of the goal kicks, I really hope we carry on doing it because it does just make sense. Like if you think logically, we're a team who excel on attacking corners. We prefer to defend out wide because we love heading the ball out of the box and we don't really feel endangered by it. So if you then force the goalkeeper to take a long goal kick, it basically, like, you should feel confident that you're going to win that ball back because you're so confident that your centre backs are going to win anything aerially. So you just press up, bring the whole team a bit higher up, get your centre backs on the halfway line or wherever, and just meet that header, and then possession can be recycled. Whereas if we invite them to play it short, that's when we sometimes struggle because teams can quite often find a way to play through our pressing from the front.
What I really like here is that I wrote about after Brentford, we pressed David Raya in the Brentford game and pressed all their goal kicks. And there it was quite effective, but we used a 3-4-3 to press. And that means that you've got quite a lot of players quite high up the pitch and you leave the back three slightly exposed with not really necessarily the cover they need. If they do win the header, who's actually going to be there to pick up the seconds if they're not able to pick out a teammate with the header, which I think is a bit too much to ask for. So here slight variation, 3-3-1-3. So definitely a 3 with 1 going to join, and then that extra 3 behind, which means if they do go long, actually we've got enough bodies here. We've got a box of 6 that are all matched up in this sort of rectangle shape. That means if the ball drops, we're going to have more numbers here to get the second ball.
And also, I presume if you're someone like Zuma who's doing some of those big booming headers, you can almost make a turnover to a counter attack. Because if you're banging that header up to a defense and your attack that's really high up, they can win that, turn that over, do something quite quick.
Yeah,
There's a lot of logic to it. Immediately, it felt immediately after seeing that, and I actually should mention my favourite moment of the game is Lanzini being an angry boss towards Reece James because he tried to put him off during the penalty. I love that. Football always needs that, especially in a London derby. And I suppose I also didn't mention Jack's one positive message in the pre-game, which was Lanzini loves the London derby, almost question mark, trying to find some positive. He's got another one in the London derby. That record is ridiculous now, really. But I think we lost the second goal because we got a little bit too excited that we just scored a goal, would be my feeling. And I think the game management and a little bit of emotional maturity was lacking there, especially in Rice. And I know I'll come to you, Jack, for the issues on the left. But if I look at that, we had probably not as many people back as we usually have when we have a ball in the central area, because Dawson was ahead of the ball for some scary reason of Dawson moving forward with the ball. The sensible thing to do there in a tough position is keep the ball, having just scored. Is that maybe a weakness we're looking at with Rice? He doesn't quite have the experience to think about game management all the time, Cal, or is that very harsh?
I think it was just a bit of a freak incident. Like, if there's one player in our team that I'm so confident on the ball in possession and generally making the right decision, whether it's to pass forward, to pass backwards, to pass sideways, it's him. But I think it was just a very momentary lapse in concentration. I saw some people on Twitter actually putting the blame on Souček because he didn't receive the pass. But I mean, you're asking a lot of him to receive that pass because
I know Rice is our golden boy, but that's just not fair.
Yeah, because I'm thinking Dawson was running back, but it was just not a good pass. No.
Yeah,
and then it just invites the break. But
it comes from that turning over possession, not losing possession, but the way we had turnover possession on the left, Jack.
Well, no, for me, I think it's harsh to blame Rice here, or to blame kind of game management. I think we worked an overload on the left side brilliantly. I think that all the build-up play that leads to Johnson having the ball in this free space on the left-hand side with the chance to cross on his left foot is fantastic. What happens is Johnson doesn't have a left foot that he's confident enough in, so he turns out and plays a ball back into the middle. Once you've worked an overload like that, Chelsea have drifted across into the central area to try and get across to cover the overload. So now they've got loads of bodies in the middle of the pitch. The last place you want the ball to go is to be fired right back into the centre straight away. And that's exactly what he does. And suddenly the two central midfielders have got about 4 bodies around them. And Rice, the decision Rice should make is to turn around and go, right, I know we spent ages building that attack, but now I'm going to play it back to the keeper and we start again. But actually he doesn't let go of the fact that we've worked really hard to build that attack, and he tries to maintain it and keep it going. And that is a really poor decision. But the issue is the systemic problem, and it all comes from, again, not having a left footer on the left side. For as good as Johnson is, if Masuaku's there, I don't love Masuaku, but if Masuaku is there, he either dribbles or crosses on the left foot. And you get something out of spending ages working the overload.
It's interesting because I would always say if it was a left back choice between Masuaku and Johnson, I would go Johnson as a left wing back. That seemed like an overly cautious move, and one that when the change made, you could see how the balance improved in the second half of Masuaku, I guess. And then the other question, I suppose, is there's two questions. There's Diop's position and the goalkeeper's save. I'll go to Issa Diop's best friend, Cal, first. Is he slightly too tucked in when the ball's flow? Because the pass to Ziyech is good. The pass from Ziyech to Mount is excellent.
It's ridiculous. We've got to say that pass is absurd.
It's perfectly floated and perfectly lands to the pace of it. It's lovely. And the finish, because we won't give it enough credit for what it is an excellent finish, an excellent bit of technique. But should Diop have been managing his left slightly more than the centre?
I think so, probably. In hindsight, it's easy to say that. But I think if you sort of consider all the things, so at that moment in time, we hadn't really realised that Johnson had bust his hamstring trying to run back. So I think Diop's probably sort of cautiously in this sort of no man's landy kind of thing, like, oh, shall I go out? Oh, I'm not going to do it yet, just in case. And he probably doesn't also expect that pass to come and be so perfect. So he's probably thinking, oh, I've got a little bit more time. It's fine. Johnson will get back. And then all of a sudden, this absolute worldie of a pass just comes over and just scraps anything that he might have been thinking about that. Johnson obviously doesn't get back in time, and then it gives him out acres of space to pull out a pretty exquisite, well, at least very well placed finish.
I think briefly on this, I think it's difficult to say who's at fault, because I'd like to say that when Johnson pulls up, he's got to really be screaming cover.
Yeah.
And I either Diop is deaf or he wasn't screaming at him to get across, because really when he pulls up, he should be absolutely like belting out, I'm not getting back. You need to cover the wide space rather than getting narrow. And it's difficult to say. If Johnson makes the shout, then it's all Diop's fault. If Johnson doesn't make the shout, for me, it's all Johnson's fault.
The goalkeeper, Jack, I don't know if you've had much chance to see it back.
I haven't.
You haven't. So from your first view, what were your thoughts from inside the ground?
My first view was more about the two defenders, and I didn't appreciate the fact that Diop goes narrow. I think you just got to have the awareness. Sometimes just Diop doesn't have that of noticing we're very exposed here. I should probably stick a little bit wide because there's only one bloke in the middle. So why do I need to drift close? There's just no need for me to be there. I can stick in my zone and mark my zones. That was my main issue. But you were saying something about Fabianski jumping again.
Well, yeah, I mean, you said that was picked up by, I was about to say Ron Howard, very different man, Tim Howard. Probably didn't swear as much in goal, Ron Howard, as Tim did, but it was him who picked out a jump and
yeah. So it was the same on both goals actually. The first goal as well. So he was he was in air when Mount's shot came in, which then just means he can't plant his feet, which means he can't spring off his feet to get down faster to the corner and essentially make a save at his near post. Because he was in the air, he didn't have that, and that sort of 1 second delay means that he just can't quite get his hand far enough into that corner, because he wasn't actually that far away from the near post in terms of his positioning. It was just because he's sort of literally, obviously it is a game of seconds and stuff, and it's just that he didn't have that propulsion. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's just one of them things as well. I mean, he's he's been brilliant this season, but it's almost just science that as you get older, your reactions get slower and blah blah blah. So he's not helping himself by making these like doing the jumping and stuff, being in the air. He should be doing everything to help himself out, and that is not the right way to set up to save a shot like that, I don't think.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before on the podcast, but keepers like to do this. It's not, I mean, he's not jumping. It's you're just sort of slightly bouncing. And I think what it helps keepers to do, a lot of keepers do it, is to feel like they're ready for something. You know, you're sort of so amped up because you can see a chance is coming. So you bounce to try and sort of get yourself ready to spring. But if you carry on when the shot's being taken or when the chance is coming to the point of a shot, then you just completely do yourself all ends up, because if you're jumping, you've got no chance to set yourself.
I would guess the other thing, because people are calling out a thing, it's that old adage, you can't be beaten in the near post. Is that I think is less and less said now, because you can obviously be beaten at your near post. I would guess my defence for him there is I would assume as percentages go, that's the least likely thing that Mount was going to do, because you're mainly taught, not only are you mainly taught to shoot across goal in situations like that because of your wider area and because of keeper covering, but also you'd expect him to pass because of the weight of the pass, and he has tucked it right in his bottom corner. So I wouldn't go either of those goals too critical on Fab. I'm not really marking him down as a bad game, Callum.
No, I don't think so. It wasn't like he's had better performances recently, obviously, but it wasn't terrible. Like it's not like unforgivable mistakes. It's just poor.
Look, the thing is I think you don't mark the keeper for a mistake like that based on whether it goes in or not. What you mark the keeper for is jumping when the shot is taken, and you just can't do that. I don't really care if the shot's amazing and therefore goes in, and you look at it and say, well, the keeper's not going to save that anyway. I think we said it before with a free kick. Was it Trent's free kick? And he was jumping, and it was like, well, he's had no chance to save it. Fair play, but still, don't jump, because you've given yourself no chance by doing that.
Bad habits that will come back to haunt you, I suppose, isn't it? And there will be moments, maybe today, where you might be able to pull off a save that was difficult if you don't have the bad habits forming.
Well, exactly. At least he's giving himself a chance. If he's flat on the ground.
Well, that's their goal. And at that point, 2-1, and it felt very deflating conceding that second goal just before halftime. But having just got back into the game, we adjust, we build on, and the second goal, our second goal, that was fantastic, Jack.
It's a wonderful finish. It's a wonderful finish from Bowen, and I just like that it's all the things that have changed. Kind of Souček going up, getting in the mix for us to be able to go long when we need to, and then Soufal just it's a very simple assist, but Antonio and Soufal combining the spaces that they're occupying, and then it just opens up the room for Bowen to take a touch and shoot. I
suppose it's everything we said about Soufal before. Johnson probably wouldn't be there, because Soufal, when he commits, and he was in the area committing. I'd also like to point out, it was probably the first time I thought Antonio had really, just before that, to get the ball to Souček, he'd bullied down the left, he'd cut in and laid off, and then he carries on his run like a straight. His energy levels were up. Something had happened, whether it was a conversation at halftime, whether it was just Bowen being there to change where his positioning was. But
I think it's all that he pressed, and then he realised, actually, if I run about, it actually works, doesn't it?
It was certainly felt like a return of the old beast mode Antonio, didn't it? I mean, the other thing is Bowen's instinctive finish, Callum, it's far removed from midweek European games or the Brighton game where he didn't look like a finisher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's what we talked about on the last pod, wasn't it? He's got a very preferred position on the pitch that he likes to shoot from and has good success with, and it is that cutting in on his left foot and curling it into the far corner, and he's done it with aplomb. But there's still other opportunities, even today, like that were admittedly not easy ones, but chances where he wasn't in that position but was still in a position to score, and he didn't execute them. He had 4 shots today and only one of them hit the target, which was that one. There was one where he was really stretching, and it would have been difficult to say that he should put that away because he was really on the stretch. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to say we predicted it, but we predicted it.
I think it's funny that I almost look at finishers with Bowen now and say, if you could give me Bowen in front of goal with the ball coming back at him from a rebound, or you could give me Bowen 25 yards out on the right, I'd probably opt for 25 yards out on the right.
Dawson's going to bring it, Bowen! Oh, Bowen scores! Brilliant! Absolutely brilliant for West Ham! There was a hesitation on the edge of the penalty area for Chelsea. Wonderful goal by Jarrod Bowen. What a game!
So in terms of performances, we kind of picked out 4. I mean, Bowen today was fantastic, Jack.
Energy, just everything you love about the bloke. Just sprinting out to press in the first half an hour, doing all of Antonio's pressing, and then them combining after that to press really energetically. His runs in behind were a little bit sketchy at times. I think he had 3 consecutive offsides in about 5 minutes.
They gave Antonio the blame for the offside, and I think that was mainly Bowen for not. He had one player to do on a line with and still somehow managed to not work out not to go. Also, just ran in a straight line, whereas if he moved off to the side, you create two lanes. Instinctively not a striker.
Yeah.
But and also he looked dangerous again, Jack, as well.
Look, he is really dangerous. When he's on it, and he's such a difficult player to deal with. And if he had a touch more composure in the box, he would be a serious problem for this league. He did have 2 more chances. I know one was on the stretch, but he had another chance where he was through 1v1 with Mendy and he blazed that over. But yeah, just really wonderful kind of energy throughout, and that's all you can ask for someone when we're playing a counter-attacking system and you're playing sort of a second striker position. If you're going to get about, hassle people, get on the last line, make runs in behind all game long, then you're doing a wonderful job, and he did a brilliant job of that today.
The another one, and I will go back. We've just go back to you, Callum. We've been as harsh as we can be on him for that goal. Probably we've examined that, but Diop's return a success today.
Yes. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching him today. I think we've been saying for a while now we'd like to see him instead of Dawson, because he will offer us something more in build up and possession.
It's going to be Dawson he's replaced at the moment.
That's it. But today he just proved it perfectly. He had the highest pass success rate on the whole pitch, 94%. Which is exactly what we've been saying we needed from our left-sided centre-back. And especially today, when Cresswell wasn't there, we didn't have Cresswell or Ogbonna, and somehow we still managed to create down that side, which was brilliant. And
particularly after Johnson comes off.
Yeah, exactly. Not much more else to say, really. I just thought defensively he was solid. I didn't think he was exceptional, but again, as we said before, like that's kind of what you want from your centre back. It maybe helps that he was in a 3 for a lot of it. That sometimes does, but I thought even after Zuma went off and that part where we played in a 4, he still looked assured. No complaints, and I hope that's enough confidence. It gives Moyes enough confidence to trust him a little bit more, because he's going to need to now, because if Zuma's out,
he's going to get the next game, isn't it? So, we'll see.
We've mentioned kind of Antonio, and that was a proper Antonio performance, kind of last 60 minutes, second half, Jack. That was a proper return of kind of what he had.
From minute 30 onwards, the guy was unbelievable. And in the way that he can be, just knocking centre halves off the ball. I think my favourite was the run in behind where he's 1v1 with the centre back and he just like throws his body in, knocks, I can't remember who it was, off the ball and just drives in field. Just when he gets back to doing that, and using his body really well, making runs in behind and causing problems, particularly out of possession, by scaring people, because he's a scary bloke. If Bowman's running at you, you might feel a little bit more confident about keeping the ball. If you've got Antonio charging at you full pelt, it's a different story. So when he's doing that, it just causes this sort of unsettled thing in the opposition defence and midfield that really helps the way we play so much. He was very, very good. The only thing I really didn't like in that period of the game was when we were managing things quite well and he just decided to charge back
and push someone over just on the edge of the box.
Shoved someone over on the edge of the box. And it was just like, I really like the fact that you've got back into pressing and you realise how much you're helping, but don't do that.
I mean, it's good. If you're going to do this preserving your energy thing, do it by not coming back and being a bull in a china shop in your own defence. They're quite settled there.
Exactly.
There's a chaos factor that he brings. I think what the first half an hour, my opinion was basically that Christensen knew how to play against Antonio. And every time Antonio tried to back in, he just moved out of the way so that Antonio couldn't back in, and then lost all balance and couldn't be bullied. And I think he either learned from that or something was said, and he didn't seem to pin himself on Christensen anymore. Whether he'd decided, I'm going to test the weedy little.
I think that was pretty much it. He probably looked at the weakest one in theory,
and then
Yeah.
realised that brains sometimes beats brawn.
Yeah.
The other standout, I think, tactically wise, is what Soufal has brought back in the last few games, and I think it probably doesn't stand out as much against Brighton because of the negativity around the result, but it would today.
Yeah.
Jack again.
Well, he's just brilliant, isn't he? 1v1 defensively, fantastic. He blocked so many crosses today. Got out and blocked. I don't know what the numbers are, but he seemed from a fan's perspective in the ground seemed to be constantly getting out and blocking crosses or making tackles before crosses came in. And yeah, like we said a little bit earlier, getting up onto the last line in a way that Johnson won't do. He's got that slight positional indiscipline, but does it perfectly. He chooses his moments perfectly. Where he just drifts out of right wing back and goes into a sort of striker position or a right wing position or an attacking midfield position and adds a body where we really need one. So yeah, he was fantastic throughout, and I think we look so. I mean, I keep saying this. I love Johnson, but I think we look so much better with Soufal in the side on that side.
It's the attacking balance, isn't it, and the confidence on the ball that seems to bring confidence to the others who maybe are less.
Yeah.
I've said the word confident too much, but who are less naturally confident on the ball. They have that option, which is always available to them. It's almost like the way Lanzini can help you in the middle. Soufal seems to help on that side. Johnson has got a lot of good quality. It feels harsh at the moment because we're talking about how great Soufal was, as if Johnson hasn't been. But
yeah,
he's a young fullback who hasn't got hasn't got the experience Soufal has in knowing when his moments and knowing his game as well. And I suppose that's different.
That's pretty much it. I think we've all said that how great Johnson is defensively, but I don't think like Soufal's as good as him defensively and better attacking. So it just seems to be a logical decision to just play him, because it's not like you're sacrificing defensive competency by having Soufal in. He's still a great defender, but he's also just brilliant at crossing the ball.
Yeah.
So Brighton, which was a hard game to watch. It certainly felt like a game we were in, but we weren't leading. Well, we led the game for a very, very long time. Clever corner routine. I will give Souček, not leading as in carrying on, but leading the game, certainly two different things. Souček, I would give Souček a lot of credit for that goal before we kick on with videos, because I think he knows he has to make the faintest of touches from where he is to do that. And I don't think that's an accident. I think that's a gloriously clever header that's going to go under the radar. And then there is 80 minutes of Brighton having a lot of the ball. And then there was a switch to a back five when Masuaku came on. We were trying to really protect the lead, Jack, and did the opposite, I guess.
Yeah, well, I will finally rest when the days of bringing Masuaku on to shore it up at the back are over. This is exhausting. I don't know how many times now we've seen different managers look at sort of last 10-minute windows of games and go, you know what, I'm going to bring on the defender. I'm going to bring on Masuaku. He's probably the least reliable 1v1 defender to bring on in a situation where you want to stop crosses into the box. And yeah, obviously that's exactly where the goal comes from, him completely failing to do the main thing he was brought on to do. And again, people have come out on Twitter and said, well, look, he was good on the ball. I don't think he was that bad. That's not what he's there to do. Great. He might do a bit of fancy stuff on the ball. He might be press resistant. The main reason he's there with 1-0 up is to stop them from crossing the ball into the box. It's his fault.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because Lamptey not starting felt like a really big boon. They brought him on, and the lad, he reminds me more of Aaron Lennon than a defender at that point. He seemed to be tormenting down the side. And you do think, wow, that's their best attacking threat, is that side. What we need is someone who can't really concentrate to come on and stand in front of him. Yeah. It's harsh because Masuaku said a good game today, and you do see the positive. But when it is, I guess your argument is that you're bringing him on to do just a defensive job, that actually you're taking away most of his strengths. And you're just asking him to do something he's going to be weak at. So I reckon almost you could argue Fornals is probably a better defender in that situation.
I just think the switch to a back five is the most strange thing, because Brighton had gone down to 10.
Well, that's it, yeah. And we've contained them pretty, they obviously dominated possession, but I feel like we contained their actual threat relatively well.
They weren't really creating very much.
Yeah, exactly. There wasn't any danger. So to switch it up, again, we talked about it, and logically on paper, it made sense. I can see it's like a FIFA move, isn't it? But let's get back five more bodies defensive.
He's got ultra defensive.
Yeah, but even today, Masuaku, he scored the winner. It was great, but he did let in a lot of crosses into the box again. He wasn't great defensively today. He was good at attacking, but yeah, it was just annoying. It was a good cross. Oh, my earphones just fallen out. It was a good cross from Lamptey, but yeah, just silly from Moyes, I think.
I just my main thing would be we were disrupting them fairly well, and they've gone down to 10, which means the main thing you want to do is to press them in the midfield because they've got one less body. Why would you take a body out of the midfield area?
It's interesting to think when certainly when is Noble going to play in the league, if not then, but when is Kral going to play in the league? If it's not, right, we've got an extra man, we're trying to, because maybe the best way to stop Lamptey is to stop the supply of the ball being so easy to Lamptey. And Kral's he made his name being a defensive midfielder who comes in and fills these gaps.
Yeah, and by the way, Rice and Souček were absolutely knackered for the last 20 minutes of the game. And Rice was doing these wonderful, like crazy dribbles forward and picking out these brilliant passes. And then it would go to the defensive phase and he was just like dead, standing with his hands on his knees.
There was the attack certainly didn't work. I think that's almost you could argue maybe we let in that goal because our defensive midfielders are so tired from doing the attacks work for them as well. And certainly near the end when Deck did that run where he ran around about 3 or 4 of them, cut a ball
blind
through.
Pass.
Yeah, there was the blind pass. He did one at one point. Someone came at him and he just did a little dink, flick it up over the foot. He was, in terms of being a bit of a baller. That was a game where he really did. There was the pass to Bowen which gave Bowen a big chance. Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
But yeah, didn't have the legs at the end there. Also the goal, I was furious with Craig Dawson on that, Callum, who I felt got bullied by a small, angry troll striker.
Yeah, pretty much that's exactly it. It was poor defending from him. And like we say, for a defender who we basically herald as being ridiculously imperious in the air, like that's the one thing he's notoriously good at, is heading balls away. And it was just a nice little floated cross into the box, and this little French shitbags just battered him and like managed to score some. It wasn't like, well, it was a great finish, I'll give it to him, but it's almost like he fell backwards and hit it. Like he just, yeah, it was.
It's a great finish, overhead kick in the last minute.
It was a great finish.
Yeah, but he shouldn't be able to do it. He shouldn't be allowed to do that.
It's not like
Dawson
those crouch ones. If I weird that when I come to think of these acrobatics, the crouch ones come to mind, the Carroll ones as well, where you're standing position and then you do it. He'd manoeuvred his body and bullied Dawson back. And it's hilarious in a way, having watched when Dawson today, when he had Lukaku on him in the Chelsea game, loved the scrap. He obviously doesn't like to be a bully, Craig Dawson. Is clearly his problem. And Morphe's a bit too short for him to do it on. I suppose the other problem, we had moments where we created, but we weren't great in the build-up either. It didn't seem like we were our best in terms of how we played our attacking game, Jack.
Again, lack of left footer on the left side being a huge issue here. The first phase of the build-up was an absolute nightmare for most of the game. And then you're asking Antonio to do something that he's not great at, is you're just punting balls into him. And the midfield's kind of disconnected from him. You're saying, yeah, can you hold up, maybe roll your man and then spin and then run in behind as well? And, so a bit, you're asking him to do way too much. Admittedly, even if you're asking him to do way too much, he was still terrible at doing any of the things that he was asked to do throughout the whole game. It was a really, really, really poor performance from Antonio. And then Benrahma as well. This is one of the worst performances I've seen from him this season, and maybe even across last season as well. Just gave the ball away so much. And I don't think Antonio helped. There was one example that kind of summed it up for me, where you kind of attribute equal blame, where we were on the break and it was sort of a 2v2 and Antonio just goes too early. And we had the ball in our own half, and he could have just stayed in our half and therefore been onside, but he ran into the opposition half, and it meant Benrahma couldn't pass to him. So then Benrahma had to try and dribble past 2 people. But then he made a complete hash of that. He did like 2 step overs and just ran into the first defender. And it's, you're looking at both of them and thinking, this is just like it's Keystone Cops. What's going on here? It's really simple attacking principles, and you're just completely getting everything wrong.
Passing was, I don't think you'll have many games where, Fornal's passing success was about 67%. I think Benrahma's 54.
Yeah, 54 is terrible.
That is, 1 in every 2 passes should not be going awry. That is quite bananas. Even Rice was 77, Souček 62.
Yeah.
You look at a team who couldn't, Brighton for what they do. And there's one moment in particular where Zuma got absolutely caught by about 2 of them swarming him down the central. Yeah. They do make it very, very difficult, but we have players who can deal with that. So it was odd to see them completely kind of fail to, I guess. I mean, the other question is that poor? Was that poor management, or just a poor performance, or a mixture of both, Jack?
Both for me. I mean, the thing that was bemusing for me is not taking Ben Rama off. Like watching the game, this bloke is 1 in 2 passes, as you've just said, are going astray. You've got Lanzini sitting there, who's one of the best and most consistent passers, will really protect and look after the ball for you. And you're like, no, I'll just leave Ben Rama on for way, way, way too long. That's very strange. And then taking Fornals off was strange to me. I think Fornals was playing all right.
He had a good game.
And I just couldn't understand why he would take Fornals off at that point. I don't know. I just thought, I didn't think we managed the game very well at all. And it's important to say Brighton are very good. They press very hard. It's very difficult to deal with. Basuma was outstanding. I thought Basuma was just unreal throughout the whole game. But yeah, we need to do what we were doing better. So performance not good enough, and then managing in game. After all the praise I've given him for Chelsea, just kind of abandoned post and did the same sort of slowness to react thing here. When I think, Lanzini probably could have come on at half time even, or 55 minutes into the game.
Yeah, well, we saw the impact today, didn't we, of bringing in Lanzini and creating a midfield three. And you can't help in retrospect looking back and thinking they were absolutely dominating possession. They were pressing us ridiculously. They pressed, I think it was 7 passes per defensive action, which is more than City. So they pressed us more intensely than Man City did. Yeah. And if you bring Lanzini on and create that 3-man midfield like we did today, we saw how effective that was and how much time it bought us in the middle of the park. So yeah, it was just annoying. And when he did come on, he did look great again, which is why he ended up starting today, because his energy and his ability on the ball were once again shown to be brilliant.
Kind of disappointing as well that like Brighton were able to make such bold decisions in game. Potter was able to basically go to a back 4 with Lamptey and Cucurella, and they're both playing on the wing basically. So you just got 2 at the back. So you're playing the classic City 2-3-5. The fact that we didn't get any change of them down the flanks is just strange, because they're so exposed and they're not, the individual quality is not there. With City, it's Diaz and Laporte covering those spaces. That's a problem. Here it was literally Shane Duffy trying to cover all of that space behind Lamptey. How have you not exploited that? That is unforgivable.
So we have a quick look then, and it's hard to go into detail on Dinamo because the game is going to be, we don't have anything to play for. I suppose all we know, Jack, is that they need at least a point probably to win this, and so they're going to be sending a strong team. I presume, will be thinking this is a great chance to rest a lot of players.
I kind of hope that we do look at it like it's a bit of a free hit and a chance to rotate massively. I just think we've got so many games coming up, particularly with the quarterfinal, League Cup quarterfinal as well. I tend to not be on this side of things. I tend to say I think we should play first teamers because momentum, etc. But here we've just had I assume a pretty exhausting game for the team against Chelsea, especially with all the injuries. So I would hope that we see some of the youngsters and a chance for some people to impress. It will be tough though, like you say, because Dinamo will probably put out their first string and really be trying to get a result. They need to get a result. So it could end up being a pretty significant mismatch squads wise.
Anyone you're looking at hoping play, Callum? I assume we've seen Perkins, much more pictures of Sonny Perkins in first team training. Harrison Ashby was on the bench today. Do you think they'll flood in any more youngsters? Obviously, we're probably looking at having two most senior centre backs injured. We might not want to risk a third one in a nothing game.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I would expect. There's lots of talk about how good Alisi and Batista are, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see one of them, at least given what we've seen today with Zuma and stuff. And I know, is it Alisi or Alessi? I'm not quite sure how you pronounce it, but he scored.
It's definitely Baptiste.
Yeah,
it's definitely Baptiste, not
Batista. Fair play. But he scored a ridiculous solo goal for the under-23s this weekend, where he basically ran through the whole team. So I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe see him.
Tough for him, but that says nothing about how good a defender he is.
Oh no, not at all.
No, that is the problem with youth football at times, isn't it?
But I think, if ever there was a chance to give him a shot, then now is the time. We need to protect what centre backs we have left and make sure they don't go out and play and get injured in what is essentially a nothing game for us, at least.
I'd like to see I'd like to see Ashby. I'd like to see Krall and Noble as well. I can't see why you wouldn't play the two of them.
Yeah. I think Elisi's probably the shout in terms of coming in as a centre back because Baptiste's definitely got a higher ceiling than Elisi, but Elisi's probably more ready to play at the level.
And
so
also if it works, it's perfect. It's the antidote almost. We need a left-footed centre back who can play the ball, and he's a left-footed centre back who can apparently play the ball brilliantly. So if it works, then it could be a lucky charm for us, really.
Yeah, I think hopefully we see Ashby. I don't know whether Chester's gets a shout here, but it'd be nice.
He made the picture. How many can you play, I suppose, before you're just making it a development game and it's a bit silly? I don't know where you're.
What's interesting to me is I assume they won't play Elisi and Baptiste, so it's which centre back plays.
I'd assume Diop because of he's had far less game time than Dawson over the.
Yeah, but also then you kind of look at Dawson as being the one who could be the talker and the one to mentor a young centre back.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
and help a young centre back through the game. I would hope Diop as well, but that feels a bit scary. The idea of Diop having to focus on his own game and help a youngster through a game.
There's a lot of reasons to be fearful of Diop having to concentrate on two very big shots. Go there, but the ball's near you. Oh shit! Oh well. A glamorous European game to the most glamorous place and most glamorous team England. It's Sean Dyche's Burnley. Tactically, this must be one you can kind of, your simple, what you're expecting from Burnley. They play pretty much the same way, regardless of who they're playing against and what they're doing. They're gonna be hard work, and they're certainly going to test Issa Diop's main weakness of the ball being quite high. Jack.
Yeah, but then also I think that Diop and Dawson have managed quite well against some big strikers in the Europa League. So I assume it'll be those two together, and I quite like the idea of those two together against Burnley, to be honest with you. So I'm not too worried about the defence. What's more interesting to me is how you set up the midfield and what you do to try and unsettle, because they play such structured 4-4-2 system, which is difficult to break down. I mean, we defend in that way sometimes, and it's really, really tough to get through. So what will be interesting is how we set up to try and unsettle their midfield area and to create space for our creative players. And we did a really great job of it last season by playing Lanzini in a deeper role. He featured a little bit there against Chelsea, so maybe that's what we'll see against Burnley. I'd quite like to see that.
Yeah, I expect us to do that, to be honest. I think we mentioned it on the last pod about our struggles breaking down teams that defend pretty deep and quite compactly, and I think we've seen today how effective Lanzini can be in that role. So I think that should really be all Moyes needs to give it a go.
I think we're expecting Cresswell, who's been in light training before this game this weekend anyway. Cresswell straight back in.
Yeah.
Soufal on the right.
Yeah.
Are you going more standard 4-2-3-1 again, or maybe 4-3-3 if we're talking Lanzini, Fornals and Bowen and Antonio, and Ben Rama on the bench?
Yeah, pretty much that. I would go with that team, and I would play it more as a 4-3-3 with Rice as a sitter and with Souček and Lanzini ahead.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I've not asked you to predict the Dinamo game because it's almost ridiculous because you've got nothing to go on.
Yeah.
But on Burnley, what are your thoughts? Where's your positivity for me, Jack?
I think if Cresswell comes back in, and with Diop playing on the left side, and if Lanzini plays in a deeper role, then I'd really like the idea of dominating possession against them. And if Antonio can continue the form that he showed in the last 60 minutes against Chelsea, I'd give us a really strong chance of winning that game. They've not been terrible this season. They've been quite good and quite exciting going forward. But you told me earlier that Cornet has picked up an injury today. So if he comes out of their team and they lose one of their main attacking threats this season, I don't think they've been quite as good at the back this year. So I would be hopeful that we can get 3 points there. No,
that loss today puts them joint on 10 points with Norwich and Newcastle in the bottom three. Obviously, they've got a game in hand because they had the game called off by snow. Callum, away in Burnley on a Sunday afternoon?
Well, not for me, thanks.
I'll be there.
Yeah, but
is that not an Airbnb trip with a girlfriend?
3 points for me. I think that should be obviously the target. I think we're more than capable of it. And I think today's performance should really be the flame back after what has been a pretty difficult run of games for us. I think morale would probably have understandably have been low, particularly after the Brighton game. And hopefully this will really fire them up to go and stamp some authority back on. Well, I mean, the position we're in the table now as well, like it's slowly becoming more and more of a possibility that we actually could get top four as long as we carry on, and we have to beat the teams that we should be beating to be able to do that. We can't afford to carry on dropping points to winnable games.
Well, that's kind of all the stuff on the actual football. There's a transfer rumours. The big one this week, if we look at focus on one, has been Nathan Ake. I'm going to say Nathan Ake. It's Nathan Ake, Jack?
Yeah.
It's not Nathan Ake or Ark. Nathan Ake, he's been he's almost been permanently on the bench at Man City since they bought him. He's never really had any time to run in. What are your thoughts on him? He's quite short for a centre-back, I suppose, in a David Moyes team, it feels. He's my height, and I don't feel like I'm tall enough to play defence, let alone the whole footballing ability that really lets me down as well.
Yeah, that was probably my biggest surprise to see him linked. He's only 5'10", which really does not scream David Moyes centre-back at all. But looking at his numbers, it has actually got me really excited about it. Like, we've been crying out on this podcast for a few weeks now about how desperate we are for a left-sided centre-back with a left foot that can play the ball. And Ake ticks all of those boxes. He's got 94% passing success rate, which is exactly what we need from a centre-back. I think it's something like 91% forward passing as well, and a 76% defensive duel rate. So perfect. And I was actually quite surprised to see that he's got 67% aerial rate as well, which for someone who's 5'10",
Really
and he's having 5 aerial duels per game as well, and he's winning 6 more than Ogbonna. So who knows? He must have a great leap on him. But yeah, I'm all for it. He's also got pretty good recovery pace as well, which is something that, depending on who's playing, we often lack. So yeah, it gets the seal of approval from me.
I think he'd like the chance to kind of get going again, because he's gone to City. I don't know whether he would have thought himself that he was going to get game time, but I assume that he would have wanted to continue on the trajectory that he was on, and he's just kind of stunted, and he's not really done very well when he's come in at Man City either. There's been a lot of criticism for him when he has played for Man City. My only issue with this transfer is there is no pressure on City to sell, and if you're in 2 European competitions, you want 4 centre backs. So unless City have a plan to bring another centre back in, I'm not sure I can see a way that certainly can't see a way that we'd agree a loan deal, and then the fee itself would probably have to be huge. No. Yeah,
I do. It's my main concern was when they did throw a lot. Was that 40 odd million or?
Yeah.
It was a big transfer, and I don't see us having the money to, invest heavily. It depends. It depends if we really feel like we're going to take the plunge on it, I suppose. It certainly doesn't feel like one they're going to say, we'll let you have him on loan, unless they have confidence in such younger defenders. He's on the bench at the moment for them. Is he good enough to play left back in a pitch, do you think?
He plays left back pretty regularly for City.
Yeah, I just wonder whether that's also a view that you could maybe transition him out to left back.
Well, we know Moyes loves versatility. He loves his players to be able to play in a number of positions because it allows him to keep a small squad, which he enjoys, because it's easier to manage less characters, basically. So yeah, if he can get a player that can come in and cover left-sided centre-back and left-back, then it's a win for Moyes.
It's good economics. If you spend, I was going to spend 15 million on a left-back. I was going to spend 20 million on a centre-back. So if I could do 25 million on both at the same time, bosh, job's a good one. Well, I think I've got a seal of approval from your Knees Up Mother Brown podcast team, and that should probably put a seal on our podcast. We can end it there. Thank you, gentlemen, on a wonderful day where we have beat the league. Well, were the league leaders. Now the team just above us in third place as things stand, I believe. 1-3-2 from 2-1 down. Can't have a better Saturday really from there, can you? And that is all from us. Until next time, good night.
Right, so we're here in the offices of a Late Late Show with the host of a Late Late Show, James Corden.
Hi.
Big West Ham fan.
Yes. And big Knees Up Mother Brown man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm regularly on the general discussion page, there's always someone who's got some information, so I love it. Yeah, it's great. Yes, it's excitement surrounded by imminent disappointment. That's what it mostly is.
Get on the forum at kumb.com. Come on, you irons.